So, hi everybody, I'm Laura Kerbey. Thank you for having me this evening. So I run two organisations, as Lucy has said. I'm based in Surrey. I've lived in Surrey nearly all my life, really, apart from when I was in London at university. Oh, I'm just going to meet a couple of people. There we go. And I have two organisations. So the first that I'll talk to you about is KITE. So KITE we're in our fourth year now. And KITE, I do like acronyms, by the way, but KITE stands for Kinesthetic Integrated Therapeutic Education. And we provide AOTAS packages or AOTAS programs for children who are unable to access their education. I always say they're unable to access their education in a building. Oh, I'm going to mute Greta. So I think it was a bit of feedback. I run KITE with my friend, and the other director in KITE is my friend Andrea, who Andrea and I worked together in a specialist provision until about 9.5 years ago. So I went in as an assistant head, and then I've been there about a year, and I became the head teacher there. And then when I became head, Andrea was promoted to assistant head. So we worked really well together in our school, and we both left about the same time. We both felt a bit disillusioned, I think, with the education system, even the specialist education system. And then I set up an organisation called PAST, which was Positive Autism Support and Training, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But Andrea and I have always worked very closely together. She's based in Hampshire, I'm based in Surrey, and we would meet up and talk regularly. And we were sort of just chatting probably about 4.5–5 years ago about just how many children that we were seeing that were being referred to us for support, who were mainly autistic, but who were really, really struggling to get into school. And we realised that there was a huge need for us to provide tutoring services for those young people, but they had to be the right tutors. They had to be tutors that were really experienced at working with neurodivergent young people, but also who were able to work with young people who were really very anxious as well, and able to be incredibly flexible, and offer very sort of bespoke support. So we started off, as I say, we're in our fourth year now, so it'll be 4 years ago in September that we started, and we had 5 children when we first started, and one of them was actually privately funded. Their parents were funding them. They were all in Surrey, and we've now actually just had to close our books because we are at complete capacity. We've got 50 young people now within our service. The majority are in Surrey. I say probably 2/3 of our children are in Surrey, and then the other third are made up. And we've got a few in Hampshire, and then we've got others that are dotted around all over the place. So we've got Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Somerset, both Sussexes, so we've got little pockets everywhere. Most of the children that are in our service are autistic, but with a PDA profile as well. So I'd say probably of the 50 children that we've got in our service, probably 45 of them are autistic with a PDA profile, but we do work with other children as well. And the approach is just incredibly flexible, but the most important approach for our young people is that they have the opportunity to build up really, really good, trusting, safe relationships with the team that they're working with, and the impact of that is incredibly positive. We have half-termly review meetings as a team, and with parents and with the child actually if they want to be there every 6 weeks. And we had a meeting this afternoon with a Surrey parent whose son was so traumatized by their time in school. They're still only year 5 child, but they were so traumatized by their time in school that they wouldn't engage with any adult that came into the house at all. So any sort of anyone apart from mum or dad that came near them, they were just completely unable to tolerate them. And we started off incredibly slowly. We found a young male mentor who he himself he went to Thurfield in Leatherhead actually, but he himself was had experienced very significant anxiety when he was at school, was unable to sit his GCSEs in school because of his anxiety. And this mum, I remember her saying, I think Stefan had been working with her son for about 3 weeks, and she looked out in the garden one day and could see her son on Stefan's shoulders, sort of, you know, just sort of bobbing around in the garden and laughing. And she just said she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that he was engaging with this other person. And this young person, the hours have sort of just increased and increased and increased, and he's now working with four other people in his team as well. So, you know, it's incredibly important to us that the relationships that the children form with our team members are really, really sort of safe and trusting relationships, because we know that all the children that we work with have already had really negative experiences of adults in the education system. And we can't allow that negative cycle to continue. But you know, in almost all the cases of children that have come on, when we've taken it very, very slowly, they have been able to eventually re-engage. So every program is different. No two timetables are the same. We don't have a program that the children fit into. We build the program obviously according to the needs that are laid out in the EHCP, but the child is absolutely at the heart of their program, and we build it around them, and we go at their pace, and we use an awful lot of child-led learning as well. So I work myself with 2 young people in KITE, and as a teacher, as an ex-teacher, it was a real kind of shift for me not to sort of go to all my sessions having done lots of planning and preparation, because I realized after quite a short amount of time that there was no point doing that, because turning up with any kind of agenda or plan was being perceived as a demand by the young people that I was working with. So it's very, very child-led. The children within KITE as well, if they've got therapy in their EHCPs, then we work with therapists as well. So and often the therapy is delivered as part of their package by their learning support assistants or by their tutors. So the therapists tend to have a kind of overview of the children's program and will make suggestions, and everything is delivered very, very discreetly. So that works really, really well. Yeah, so that's a little bit about KITE. As I say, we are closed at the moment to any new children, just because we got to 50, and that is an awful lot to manage. And you know, there's myself and Andrea, we've got a fantastic new Senko in our team who's very, very experienced at working with the type of children that we have in our service. And then each program is assigned a program leader, so that's either myself or Andrea or the Senko, or we have some sort of like senior tutors that have been working with us for some time who've really proved themselves. Yeah, you know, that sort of we have to make sure we don't spread ourselves too thinly. I said to Andrea, I'd rather have 50 children and do a really good job than have 51 and do an average job. You know, we have to sort of manage. So someone's just asked in the chat, yes, we do have a waiting list. The way that the waiting list works as well is that we once you have funding, you are automatically put to the top of the waiting list. Okay, so we've had people on our waiting list for a long time who haven't got any funding available, or they might be on the waiting list whilst they're going through a tribunal process, or they might be on the waiting list you know, while they're battling it out with the local authority. But obviously once somebody's funding is available and the local authority have agreed to funding the placement, then they automatically jump to the top of the waiting list. So Greta's asked, what age groups do you support? Oh, our youngest is in year 1, and our eldest she's leaving us this year, and she is 22. But in our first year that we were going, we actually had a young person who was, I think they were 22 when they joined us. Obviously an EHCP goes up to 25, and they were only with us for a couple of years because that's all they needed. In fact, it might have only been the first year actually. She was one of Andrea's, but yeah, you know, we don't hang on to our students forever either. That's another thing. Last year we had 4 year 11 students, and we lost 3 of them at the end of the last academic year because they all went to college, and that was actually, we you know, we were sad to see them go, but it also showed that the progression can be back into a more mainstream environment. I'm sure a lot of you understand that the secondary system is particularly challenging for neurodivergent children, and what we see is a lot of children who are neurodivergent who might just about cope in the primary system, because it is more nurturing, there are less transitions, it's obviously smaller, it's not as big with all the sort of sensory overwhelm that can cause. But I think that the transfer into secondary school can be quite catastrophic actually for neurodivergent children, particularly those that are not diagnosed. But yeah, we will always find the best route for the children that are with us, and if that means leaving us to go into a different provision, then that's fantastic. We don't sort of hang on to people because we think, oh, we don't want to lose any clients. We almost want them to go when we know that the time is right. So yeah, that's really positive. So I think you can I'll have to check on the website. There's a notice on the website saying that we're currently full with a waiting list, but you can email our administrator Caroline, who's absolutely lovely, and I believe that you would just be put on the waiting list. And like I say, if you've got funding available, then you will go to the top of the waiting list, and we would be looking now at obviously a September start. We have got a few young people leaving us in September because their placements are coming to an end for various reasons, so that will open the door. And then what happens is once the funding is agreed by the local authority, then we put a call out to all our staff members, and we will match the members of staff according to, you know, their experience, their interest. Sometimes obviously it's going to secondary, then they need to be specialist in different subjects, and also their geographic location as well. Yeah, it's the teams that work with the children are all brilliant. They all kind of work really well. Even though everyone's sort of working individually, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on with the teams as well. And like I say, the parents are really involved, because most of them are at home with the children. They're sort of often there when the tutors are coming in and out the home. So we work really collaboratively with parents, and we have very sort of, we make that very clear to the local authority that, you know, we're working with this family, we're not just working with the young person themselves. So yeah, it runs pretty well most of the time. It's obviously there's lots of ups and downs, particularly because we have so many PDAs. There'll be times when their anxiety is too great to sort of be able to sort of engage in any sort of learning in their sessions, and that's absolutely fine. If, you know, I have sessions sometimes with the children that I work with, and they just want to sort of sit and chat or read with me, and that's fine. And then I'll go back the next week, and it's kind of, you know, all ready to go and sort of really keen to do lots and lots of tasks. So it's very yeah, it's kind of the engagement can be very up and down. And that, again, that's fine. We don't put any pressure on the children, but we also don't put any pressure on the tutors either, in terms of, you know, we're not breathing down their necks all the time saying, you know, what progress is this young person making and how are you evidencing that? The progress will often be seen over the course of a year. had a really emotional day, actually. I remember it was near the end of term last year. It must have been sort of like around the 20th of July. And I had 4 back-to-back meetings, sort of end of term meetings. And in 4 of the meetings, 3 of the parents sort of just cried, because they just sort of, when we were talking about how much progress their children had made in the year, they were just sort of very emotional and sort of saying, you know, using words like transformative and life-changing. So yeah, it's I'm very proud of it. I just wish that we could be bigger, because I know there's such a huge need, and I think people hear about KITE and are so relieved to hear that there is a service out there that can potentially meet their needs. And then it's obviously a bit of a disappointment to be told at the moment we're not taking on any more new people, but we have to maintain the quality that we're providing, and we also have to make sure that the tutors that are coming onto our books are 100% the right people as well, and that recruitment process, we obviously follow safer recruitment, but we also have to make sure that we've got people that come on that are right for our children. So for example, we had an application from a teacher a few months ago now, who'd worked in an autism specialist school for some time, and I read through their CV and I just said, no, they're not right. They're probably a brilliant tutor, and they'd probably be brilliant in a school for children who are autistic, but because our children don't need that very sort of autism specific support, or most of them don't need that very specific autism support, they need something a lot more kind of novel and flexible. We just didn't feel they're right for us. So, you know, we have to make sure that we're taking on the right people, because as I said, we can't risk any further negative experiences or trauma. Yeah, so that's a little bit about KITE. So does the LA consult with you in the same way they do with specialist schools? So can the parents request the LA consult you as part of the consultation process? Yes, absolutely. So this is always a bit of a strange one. So quite a few of our children have come to us through the tribunal service. The AOTAS is quite difficult to get, and the a lot of local authorities seem a little bit reluctant to agree to AOTAS. I think that one of the reasons that they are a little concerned about it is I think there's a sort of a feeling that they feel a little bit out of control, because it's like, well, what's going on with this child? And obviously it's not cheap provision. Some of our really full packages, when you've got 25 hours a week of tutoring and therapy, it's you know, as much as a specialist placement. So I think the local authority is sometimes a little wary of awarding it. So quite a few of our children have come to us via tribunal, but only today I had a direct email from a case officer in Surrey who's asked me for, you know, have you got any availability for this young person, and sort of wanted it to go straight away. So we do get emailed directly from case officers as well. So again, this is all part of our waiting list. You know, we've got people on the waiting list who the local authority haven't agreed AOTAS. They're nowhere near kind of getting funding. But if the local authority are in agreement, then you know, it can move quite quickly sometimes. The other thing about Surrey as well is, as I'm sure you're all aware, Surrey is divided into the different quadrants, and I won't name which one it is, but there is one quadrant in Surrey that seems really reluctant to use KITE. So we've got like a sort of a real pocket of young people kind of in the sort of Guildford, Woking area that they love KITE, and they seem to sort of be far more willing to sort of place their children. And then there's another part which is not, I don't know, they've got, it seems to have a very different approach, which is frustrating, because that means it's a bit of a postcode lottery. So I'm just looking what Anna says. It sounds great, and I wonder how we can bring some of the positives to support our kids in mainstream. My son has an autism diagnosis and is not brilliantly well supported. I'm concerned about how he'll cope with secondary. So that actually sort of takes me over into my other work. So I mentioned when we first started talking that I used to run an organisation called PAST, which was, I told you like my acronyms, Positive Autism Support and Training. And then over in the new year, sort of over the Christmas break, I had a bit of a rebrand. It actually came from some very negative feedback on Facebook about my company name. I don't know if any of you are aware, there's a type of ABA called PBS, which is Positive Behaviour Support. And somebody was saying that I obviously did ABA because my name was really similar to it, and I don't do ABA at all. Anyway, a very good friend of mine, who some of you might have heard of, Harry Thompson, who's a very well-known PDA advocate, he contacted me and sort of said, look, are you okay? I heard there's been a bit of backlash on Facebook today. And he said, look, Laura, I'm going to be really honest with you. He said, I think the name's clever. He said, excuse my son shouting, by the way. He said, I think the name is clever. He said, but he said, I can see why some people might make that kind of connection. And he said, but also, Laura, he said, you don't just work with autistic children. He said, you work with neurodivergent children. My eldest son is neurodivergent. He has an ADHD diagnosis. I have an ADHD diagnosis. So he said, actually, Laura, he said, you're kind of cutting out a huge portion of the young people that you work with. So he came up with the name NEST, which is Neurodivergent Education Support and Training. And then it was funny because he rang me, I think he rang me back the next day, and he was like, do you know what, Laura, I really like that name, but do you know what, I really want to be a part of NEST as well. And Harry and I have been working together for nearly 4 years. We do loads together, and so we've actually joined forces, which is fantastic because he's such an authentic voice within the PDA community. But sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but going back to Anna's question, one of the things that I do as part of my work is I do a lot of work with schools. So I can go into schools, I can do observations, I can advise teaching staff on the best way to support not just the child, but also support the staff that are working with that child as well. And actually Harry and I, that's kind of the route that we really want to take NEST down, is actually doing more training and consulting work in schools, because you're probably all aware of this, but the training that teaching staff get on neurodiversity is woefully inadequate, and it can, one teacher can make all the difference, either in a negative or a positive way. If your child's going into school and they've got a teacher that really gets them, really understands their needs, they can help that child to absolutely thrive. But the opposite is true. If you've got one teacher who your child doesn't feel understands them, doesn't feel that they're connected with them, then it can actually be really, really damaging. So yeah, as I say, we're very happy to go into schools. I'm going into school tomorrow, into a primary school, and I'm going to spend some time observing that young person, and then spending some time feeding back to the staff as well. Harry and I have got a new project which is starting in September called the NEST VIP Club, which is the Very Informed Professionals Club, and I can give you the link to our Facebook page at the end of the evening, and there's details of that on there. But what we're doing within that is really aimed at professionals, and we've got a webinar each month. But we're not running them, we're not delivering them. We've actually sought out like the best professionals in the world to talk about their various topics. So we've got Christy Forbes speaking, who again many of you might know. She's in Australia. She's another fantastic PDA advocate. We've got I always want to say the guy from Monsters Inc.'s name. It's Matt. I can't remember his name. It's Zabarski, I think it is, but it almost makes me think of the guy from Monsters Inc. But he's a very very, very sort of specialist psychologist in America who works with gifted and high intelligence. We've got people talking about neurodiversity and gender identity and trans matters. We've got Naomi Fisher, who again is very well known. She's talking about child-led learning. So we've got all these different professionals from around the world, and we want professionals to sign up for an hour a month and just learn from the best people to increase their knowledge of neurodiversity. So that's all on the Facebook page and the website. But yeah, perhaps Anna, for you, perhaps an observation with feedback and recommendations to the staff. It's amazing what people miss, actually. So I did an observation in a school in London about 4 weeks ago, and this child was sat at the back of the classroom, right at the very back of the room, and I went and sat behind him, and the mum had already sort of pre-warned me that she didn't really feel that the school were really kind of understanding how great this child's needs were, and they were sort of undermining the needs, really, which is why I went in. And I was watching, oh, Jennifer, I'm just going to mute you. I was watching this child, and he was sat picking all the paint off the back of the chair. So at the end of the observation, there was a little pile of plastic sort of under the chair. And then he was leaning back, and I've seen this before. I think I used to do this in school, actually. He was leaning back and then putting the legs of the chair onto his feet, so that the chair was like pushing him into the ground, and he was spending a lot of time pushing really hard against the table. And then at one point he was sort of lying under the table, and I said to the school, I think he's got really significant sensory needs. And they said, really? Like, they just hadn't seen it. So sometimes someone going in with a really fresh pair of eyes to look at these more subtle sort of characteristics of these children can be really, really helpful. But I just don't think they had a clue how much this young person was struggling, actually, and how much. And then they were saying, oh, we don't have any problems with him in the school, but when his mum picks him up, he's running rings around her in the playground. I said, well, yeah, that's because he's been masking all day in school. He's trying to self-regulate by kind of putting chairs on his feet and squashing himself into the ground to make himself sort of sit still. And obviously, he sort of, the moment he gets out the door, he was he was unable to sort of contain it. That's the other thing, actually, that Harry and I both on a bit of a mission is to try and educate teachers that some children that are struggling the most in school, the ones that look like they're fine. I'm sure lots of you have been told your children are fine in school, but actually I've worked with some amazing schools that have done amazing things with young people. And there's a school in there's two that really stand out to me. There was a school in tiny little infant school near Farnham. It's like 90 children in the whole school, and they had a young person there that he joined in reception, and he'd been basically got asked to leave nursery, and then he got asked to leave his little prep school he was in. So even at the age of 4, he'd already had 2 failed placements, and they created this kind of PDA little bubble for him, but within this tiny little primary school. And the head teacher there was just amazing. Like, she just got it. And not only did she get the boy and work very closely with the family, but she was also incredibly supportive of the staff as well. So if the staff were having a difficult day, she would go and muck in, and she put a tent outside her office, and she'd keep chocolate in her desk, so if he needed a break he could go and get some chocolate from her. And I'd go in and see this little boy once a week, and I would get there and they'd say, oh, hello Laura, I think he's at the pond today. And I'd trudge up there and he'd be doing a lesson sort of by the pond, or sometimes that I'd get there and say, oh, he's helping the caretaker today. They just were so adaptive to what he needed. And I remember once talking to one of the learning support assistants, and she was lovely, and she said, Laura, I'm really worried. She said, he hasn't picked up a pen yet, and he can't read. I said, it will come, I promise you. The last time I saw him was just before the first lockdown, and he was in year 2, so it was his final year there, and he was reading a book for 8-year-olds, you know, and he was writing, and they, as I say, they created this kind of PDA approach, but within a little tiny primary school, infant schools. It can be done, and there's no excuse actually for it not to be done. The other thing that I always remind schools when I do any kind of training is that the reasonable adjustments that they're making for children should be based on need and not diagnosis anyway. And I think they forget that sometimes, unfortunately. There's 2 things that I think are absolutely essential for an anxious young person when they're in any school. One is at least one safe person that they can get to when they need to, and 2 is a safe place. You can book this through the Nest website. We have a lovely young 18-year-old mentor called Sophie James, who is absolutely fantastic, and she just does little half-hour mentoring sessions with autistic children, just helping them. And she looks really young, she's really pretty, she's, you know, all the younger children love her. Let me just show you quickly these organizations that I was showing you about. So if I show you the Nest website, if I just show you around that, you can see here you've got the link here to the Nest Family Instincts, which is the kind of affiliation that we've got with Nest Instinct, sorry, with Send Family Instincts. If you go onto their website though, if I just go onto Send Family Instincts, so it's £25 all their memberships, and you can just pay for 1 month and then leave. You don't have to stay in, so you can join for a month, get as much as you like from them. But they also have an AOTAS Matters membership which is run with Heidi Mavia, who's absolutely fantastic. So these are the 2 that I usually refer people to. So there's Nest Instincts and AOTAS Instincts, and they're both absolutely fantastic. So highly recommend them for some support. If I go back onto our page, this is everything that we do. So we do autism assessments as well. So I work with multidisciplinary team. We offer nice compliant autism assessments. On this page here, the education page, there's loads of pre-recorded webinars and courses that we run. Sorry, they're already there. You just buy the recordings. There's one on PDA parenting, and then there's these little webinars that Harry and I have recorded. They're about an hour long each. They're all really popular as well. Then you've got this is everything that we offer. We do also have a support line, which is a free support line as well. So if you've got any sort of specific questions related to particularly sort of PDA as parents, or not just PDA, we don't just work with PDA children, autism, ADHD, you can just fill out this and you get a free sort of 15-20 minute call or email back. And then this is the VIP club that I told you about. So this is the different offers. So we've got an early bird price running at the moment. So that's all of that. And then we've got a very active Facebook page, so you can just find that through the website. And you'll see here it is a very active page. We probably post at least once or twice a day. So sometimes it will just be, oh, my message is off. You know, I put a post on there today. A client was asking for some support around alcohol and medication. This is a lovely poem that someone wrote that really sort of resonated with you know, a lot of the people that I'm working with. And then there'll be where is it? So just sort of helpful posts. So that I did a post on Sunday about, you know, just following your gut as a parent, and all the kinds of, this will probably resonate with lots of you, like you hear so many voices as a parent of a neurodivergent child. You know, my son didn't get his ADHD diagnosis until he was nearly 13, because I just kept being told, no, he's just naughty and you need to put firm boundaries in place. And I knew that that wasn't the case, but I wasn't listening to my voice. So all of those, so the page is really active. We also do lives as well on there. And then the other page to show you is the KITE page, which is the tutoring service. And that, as I say, we are full at the moment, but you can just have a look on the KITE page and just look at the different offers that we've got as well. So we've got obviously the AOTAS offer, support for learners, so home educated by choice. So you can fund a little bit of tutoring yourself whilst you're waiting for AOTAS. We do offer a reduced cost for parents. So that's the KITE page as well. So yeah, that sort of will give you hopefully a good idea of everything that we're doing. Sorry, I forgot to mention as well is that we do run a fortnightly support group as well online, which is free. So that runs every other Sunday evening. So we had one just this Sunday as well. So that again, if you follow the Facebook page, and again, kind of participation is as much or as little as you want. So some parents come along and ask loads of questions, and others just sit and listen. And that's run by one of our team, Carly, who's a PDA parent of 2 PDA children. I think well, he did. Harry went on Sunday as well and was there answering questions. So that group's also, you know, really helpful for parents too. You can also, I didn't show you, can also, if I just show you, can always book a consult with one of the team as well. So if you just go on to, oh, it's gone now. If you just book an appointment, you can, so you've got the family, we call them the FAST team, which is the family autism support team. So there's people within that. This is our child counsellors here. Megan will be added soon, but you've got the 2 members of our team that specialise in EHCPs. Harry Thompson offers consults as well, so he's got 4 services. He does his he does like pre-screening, sort of exploring your own neurodivergence. He does in-person consultations at our office in Bookham. Holding space is just that. It's just having someone just to sort of a safe person just to sort of listen and talk through your concerns. So he's got those services, and then we've also got the services with Sophie James, who's our 18-year-old girl who's just brilliant at just being a sort of a safe person, particularly for younger children who want to just talk to someone about being autistic. Now that Harry's PA is back, we will put the details up of the next team group. And I said to Harry the other night, I had a bit of a ADHD flurry on Sunday night of all these other ideas, and one of them was to do a sibling support group as well. So we're looking at doing that too.
It's really good to hear.
Yeah, there's lots going on. That's the thing, when you've got 2 ADHDs working together, we're constantly like bouncing ideas off everyone. Yeah. So.
Oh, thank you very much, Laura.
A pleasure.
It's been wonderful having you along.
Thank you.